All right, this is a really quick video. I just wanted to post about some claims that Antonio Subirats has made regarding, I guess you could call it the changing shape of the Earth. In his video, which is linked in the description below, he makes a number of claims. The first of which is that um, the paths or the distances traveled by uh, certain ships in the 19th century between places like China or Australia and London, uh, that the distances they purported to have traveled do not match the distances when you attempt to actually plot their courses on a map. Um, you can watch his video below. He makes his first claim about this around the 4 minute mark, 4 to 5 minutes or so. And I just wanted to share one piece of evidence that I found to refute his claim. Um, so he says that if you try plotting their courses on a globe or on Google Earth, you don't get the right distance. So I decided to take one ship, the Ariel, which was a participant in the Great Tea Race of 1866. Wikipedia article states that the Ariel logged about 15,800 nautical miles from China to London on her 1866 passage. 15,800 nautical miles is 18,182 miles. And this is the path that Wikipedia shows the Ariel to have taken. When I attempted to mimic this same path in Google Maps, which of course uses a flat projection of the Earth, I think I got pretty close, as you can see, pretty close to the course that the Ariel took. I didn't make as many vertices in my path. I made a lot of approximations. But you can see that my path comes out to 17,816.88 miles. And that value, 17,817 miles, is within 2% of the reported value. So at least for this one, I haven't charted the other three, I think, ships that he mentions. But for at least the Ariel, the distance it purports to have traveled and the distance that I can determine using Google Maps comes out to the same value, more or less. I'm sure if I refined my course a bit more, I would be able to get a closer value to that 18,182. Another claim he makes in this video, around the 6 minute and 15 mark, is that Gerard Hickson explained in his book Kings Dethroned that the time difference between Ushuaia, northern Canada, and London was 7 hours. It isn't now, at least not the part that he was talking about. Now it's 4.5, 5. So I asked him for a citation. He hasn't responded to any of my comments on his videos. I don't think I'm deleted, but maybe he just doesn't tend to respond to comments. I don't know. In Kings Dethroned, chapter 10 places 2 observers in Tierra del Fuego and one in northern Canada. The book claims that the observer is in Mansfield, Nova Scotia, but it's clear from the diagram that the observer is not in Nova Scotia. The observer is in northern Quebec. The observers are making an observation at 8 o'clock local time, which is 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. This is what Gerard Hickson states in his book. Now, apparently, Antonio Subirats has confused the direction here. If it was 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time and 8 p.m. in Tierra del Fuego, Ushuaia, that would be 7 hours of difference. However, because we are west of London, you don't add to get from Greenwich Mean Time to our time, you subtract. So Greenwich Mean Time is 5 hours ahead of us, not 7 hours behind us. And to compound this mistake that Antonio makes, and that, to compound that mistake, he says Gerard Hickson wasn't a halfwit. He didn't just get things wrong. And he makes no claim as to why he believes that. He believes that Jared Hickson, having written this book, is correct in everything that he wrote in the book. Um, if you actually read Kings Dethroned and you look at chapter 10, you will see a number of errors. There are geographical errors in chapter 10. Again, Jared Hickson is of the opinion that Nova Scotia and Tierra del Fuego are on the same latitude, and they're not. When he says that his observer is at 60 degrees north, 74 degrees west, that's not Nova Scotia. It never has been. And I think one of the things Antonio is trying to claim is that the globe model has shifted continents around over time. Not that continents have actually been moving on Earth, but things used to be out of place on old globes. Now, obviously, on very old maps, you see things out of place. But for him to claim that, for example, 100 years ago, we didn't know where Ushuaia was relative to London, or we didn't know where northern Quebec was, or Nova Scotia was relative to London, is absolute silliness. And he says these things and he makes these claims without really providing evidence. The final thing he does in this video is he shows a clip from an Eric Dubé video. And the Eric Dubé video has this still image of a globe with a square and compass on it. This is a Masonic building in Cuba. It's the Grand Lodge in Cuba. And he points out the massive distance between South America and Africa. And I mentioned, and other commenters mentioned, look at where the equator is. You know, the equator on this globe is going through the very northern tip of Africa, whereas it should really be going through the bottom section of Africa. Antonio Subirats looks at this image and says, see, this is how we used to think the globe looked. He's treating this as an authoritative model when it really isn't. If you just do a Google search for Cuba Masonic Lodge globe and you look at these pictures, you'll see how distorted this map is. Africa is not touching the Arabian Peninsula. That's news to me. Everything is shifted. Like if we treat this line here as the equator, everything is shifted wildly relatively to the equator. You can see the massive distance here between the Americas and Africa and Europe. He's treating this as some sort of authoritative globe, when really it's an artist's rendering on the top of a Masonic building. You can't put stock in crappy things. Investigate your claims. You know, do research. Try to figure out if a person is a halfwit or not before you go claiming that he can't possibly be a halfwit. He doesn't just get things wrong. All right, that's all I wanted to say. Most of Antonio's content is full of errors like this, and it could be a full-time job refuting them. I just wanted to point these things out, that his claims about distances on the globe, his claim about distances, time zone changes between places over time, like there's no merit in any of it. That's all. Have a good weekend.